The house on Calloway Street smelled like cinnamon candles on good days and cheap beer on bad ones. It was a worn-down, three-bedroom colonial with a sagging porch railing and a backyard that collected leaves like it was being paid for it, but to Serena Webb, it was the only place in the world that had ever felt like hers. Her bedroom was on the second floor, east-facing. Every morning, the sun came through the thin curtains and painted the whole room gold. She had taped Polaroid photos along the mirror frame, kept a shelf of dog-eared paperbacks above her desk, and stored a white shoebox under her bed that held every letter her mother had ever written her birthday cards, little notes tucked into lunch bags, a single folded piece of paper from the last hospital stay that said, in shaky handwriting, "You are the strongest thing I ever made, Serena. Don't let anyone tell you different." Her mother, Carol Webb, died of a heart condition when Serena was 18. Her father, Dennis Webb, grieved for approximately 4 months. Then he met Diane. Serena was 22 when everything changed. She was working double shifts at a logistics company, taking online business courses at night, and quietly holding the household together in the way that oldest daughters learn to do so. Early, it stops feeling like a choice. She paid a portion of the utilities. She cooked 3 times a week. She fixed the leak under the kitchen sink herself with a YouTube tutorial and a $10 wrench. Her younger sister, Brittany, was 20 and beautiful and understood, on a cellular level, how to make Dennis Webb feel like the hero of every room he walked into. Brittany had dropped out of her design program, come home draped in purchases no one could explain financially, and brought with her a boyfriend named Cole, tall, soft-handed, the kind of man who referred to himself in conversations about his own potential. Cole needed somewhere to stay. Brittany wanted more space. Her room was smaller, faced the alley, didn't get the morning light. The conversation happened on a Wednesday. Serena came home from a 10-hour shift, still wearing her work lanyard, and found Dennis at the kitchen table with the specific stillness of a man who had rehearsed something and was finally ready to perform it. "I need you to clear out your room by the weekend," he said. He was looking at his phone when he said it. "Brittany's going to take it. You can use the pull-out in the office for now." Serena stood in the doorway. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere upstairs, Brittany was laughing at something on her phone. Cole's sneakers were already by the front door like he owned the hallway. "Dad." Her voice was very quiet. "That's my room." "It's my house," Dennis said, simply. Finally, she moved her things on Saturday. Brittany stood in the hallway and talked about accent walls, while Serena carried boxes past her. Cole measured the window. Serena pulled the shoebox out last, pressed it against her chest for a moment, and walked down the stairs without looking back at the gold morning light falling across the floor of the room that was no longer hers. She slept on the pullout for 8 days. On the 9th day, Dennis told her that Cole was uncomfortable that having someone around who clearly had an attitude about things was creating tension, and that maybe it was time for Serena to find her own place. She was 22 years old. She was standing on the porch with 2 bags and a shoebox and the sound of the lock turning behind her. It didn't sound like anger. It sounded like a door deciding, once and for all, that she was on the wrong side of it. She stood there in the cold and did not cry. She made a decision instead. She slept in her car for 13 days. A 2004 Honda Accord with a heating system that worked on its own schedule, and a back seat she had learned, by the 3rd night, to fold herself into with a precision that felt less like sleeping and more like surviving. She parked behind a 24-hour laundromat on Mercer Avenue where a woman named Gladys worked the overnight shift and left a paper cup of coffee on the folding table near the door without ever making it a conversation. Serena never forgot Gladys. She called 2 friends. Both were sympathetic and full. She called her mother's older sister, Aunt Ruth, in Raleigh, who wired $300 and stayed on the phone for 2 hours. And Serena could hear the woman pressing down her own rage the entire time, smoothing it into something careful and practical, because Aunt Ruth understood that rage without a plan was just noise. She found a room in a boarding house on Fisk Street, $68 a week. Shared bathroom, a window that faced a brick wall, and she moved in on a Thursday and sat on the edge of the narrow bed and let herself feel, completely and without interruption, the full weight of what had been done to her. Her mother had been dead 4 years. Serena had grieved her inside that house on Calloway Street. Inside that gold-lit room, surrounded by letters that said, "You are the strongest thing I ever made." That room had been the last place her mother existed in tangible, daily form. And Dennis had handed it to Brittany without a second thought, without a moment of visible conflict, without once considering what that room meant to the daughter who had stayed, who had worked, who had contributed, who had shown up every single day. That was the part that didn't leave. Not the eviction, the ease of it. She called home twice in the following year. The first time, Brittany answered and said their dad was busy. The second time, Dennis picked up and told her, in the warm and slightly distracted tone of a man who had already moved on, that the house was looking great, that Cole was really handy around the place, that Brittany seemed really happy. Serena listened to all of it. Then she said, very quietly, "I'm doing well too," and ended the call. She wasn't doing well, but she was doing. She enrolled in more courses: accounting, property law, financial analysis, and she studied at the boarding house table with the focus of someone who understood that education was not self-improvement. It was armor. It was a locked door that no one could take from her because no one could reach what lived inside her mind. She got a second job. Days at the logistics company, evenings doing bookkeeping for 3 small businesses whose owners paid cash and asked no unnecessary questions. She ate simply, spent carefully, and tracked every dollar with a color-coded spreadsheet that she updated every Sunday night with the devotion of someone tending a garden. She met Raymond Okafor at a financial literacy seminar in the basement of a community center on the East Side. He was 51, Ghanaian-American, drove an old Camry, and owned 8 properties in undervalued corridors across the city. He talked about real estate the way other people talked about philosophy, with patience and weight, and the quiet authority of someone who had earned every word. After the seminar, while folding chairs, he asked Serena what her goal was. She told him without hesitation: financial independence, property ownership, generational stability. He looked at her carefully. "How old are you?" 24. "You talk like someone who's been broke long enough to get serious about it." "I have," she said. He handed her his card. She called him the next morning. She got her real estate license 2 weeks after her 26th birthday. She was standing in the DMV-style waiting room of the licensing office, holding her certificate, when she realized that her hands were completely steady. No shaking, no tears. She had expected to feel something enormous: joy, relief, vindication, but what she felt instead was simply readiness, like a key that had finally been cut to the right shape. She drove home through the East Side and stopped at the corner of Calloway and 9th. She sat in the car and looked at the street. The house was visible from here, 3 blocks east, the porch railing still sagging, the blue shutters she had helped her father hang when she was 16, still framing the windows of the room that had once been gold every morning and hers every night. She had a notebook, not her business notebook, a separate one, dark green cover, kept in the inside pocket of her bag. On the first page, in her clean, accountant-precise handwriting, she had written, "A woman who is removed from her home doesn't need to force her way back in. She just needs to own everything around it." She had been sitting with that sentence for 2 years. She had examined it from every angle: moral, practical, emotional. She had asked herself, in the boarding house on Fisk Street, in her better apartment now, lying awake at night with the spreadsheets and the maps, is this revenge? Is this justice? Is this just grief wearing a business plan? She had never settled on a clean answer. What she had settled on was this: the neighborhood on Calloway Street was in an overlooked corridor. Municipal planning documents, which Serena had read with the same focus she gave tax code, indicated a zoning reclassification was moving through city council that would make the area significantly more valuable within 5 to 7 years. The properties were cheap. The landlords were aging, tired, and often managing from a distance. She knew this neighborhood better than any broker in the city. She had grown up in it. She knew which houses flooded. She knew which foundations were compromised. She knew that the corner lot on Calloway and 9th gravel parking, owned by a retired postal worker named Earl Grimes, who was 82, and in assisted living, was the most strategically valuable piece of land in a 4-block radius. She called Earl's daughter in Phoenix. She made a fair offer. She built her credit score to 790 over 3 years of discipline that would have broken someone less motivated. She saved $52,000 while living like a graduate student. She bought her first duplex on the South Side at 27, managed it herself, reinvested every dollar. Second property 8 months later, third property 4 months after that. Raymond reviewed her acquisition strategy over lunch one afternoon and was quiet for a long time. "You're circling something," he said finally. Serena set down her fork. "I'm building a portfolio." "You're building a portfolio on one specific street." He looked at her steadily. "I know what that street is, Serena. You told me, once, a long time ago." She held his gaze. "Is it wrong?" "That depends," Raymond said. "Entirely on what you plan to do when you get there." She thought about her mother's letter. "The strongest thing I ever made." "I haven't decided yet," she said. It was the first honest thing she had said about it out loud. She was 31 when she bought the corner lot. Patricia Grimes accepted the offer within 48 hours, audibly relieved over the phone. Serena signed the deed on a Tuesday morning and drove to Calloway Street and stood on the corner in November air, the paper in her hands, and looked east toward the blue shutters. She felt the first tremor of something she couldn't quite name. Not victory. Something quieter. Something that had been waiting a very long time to surface. She filed permits in January, hired an architect she trusted, commissioned a mixed-use development ground floor commercial, 3 floors of residential, a rooftop garden she had specifically requested and that the architect had not questioned because he was professional and she was paying. Then she began the acquisitions. Webb Capital Holdings, LLC, named after no one, technically, and everyone, privately moved carefully through the Calloway corridor. The vacant lot on 7th, the crumbling fourplex at the north end of the block, the former dry cleaner on 8th. Papered windows and all. She was methodical. She was quiet. She was, by every legal and ethical standard, simply a businesswoman assembling a portfolio in an undervalued urban corridor with favorable zoning projections. By the end of that year, Webb Capital Holdings owned 11 properties on or within 1 block of Calloway Street. Dennis Webb's house was surrounded on 3 sides. She knew from Brittany's sparse, performance-curated social media presence that Cole had left 2 years ago, that Brittany had married someone else and moved to the suburbs, that Dennis now lived alone in the house on Calloway Street, retired, quieter, managing a property he could no longer easily afford on a fixed income and a reverse mortgage, that the rising property values were complicating in ways his financial literacy could not address. She did not contact him yet. She let the neighborhood change first. The corner lot development opened in April. A specialty coffee shop, a women's financial counseling nonprofit on the 2nd floor, residential units above all occupied within 3 weeks of listing. A local architecture publication covered the fourplex renovation. Property values on the Calloway corridor rose 17% in 14 months. Dennis received his new tax assessment in July. 2 real estate agents had brought him offers. Both buyers had withdrawn. Serena had not orchestrated those withdrawals. She had simply made certain that any buyer conducting due diligence on the neighborhood would find Webb Capital Holdings at every turn and understand, very quickly, the direction the corridor was moving and who was moving it. She called Dennis in October. His voice was smaller than she remembered. The authority had gone out of it, the way color goes out of old curtains gradually, and then completely. "Dad," she said. The word felt strange in her mouth. Archaeological, like something excavated from a time she no longer lived in. "I'd like to talk to you about the house." They met at the kitchen table, the same chairs, the same view of the backyard that had stopped growing grass long before any of this began. Dennis looked older than 70, had any right to look, as if the years had not simply passed through him but insisted on leaving evidence. The house was clean but hollow. The photographs were gone from the walls. The cinnamon candle smell was gone too, replaced by something that was mostly silence with a faint edge of loneliness underneath. Serena sat down and placed a single document on the table between them. A purchase offer. Fair market value. Clean language. Professional letterhead from Webb Capital Holdings. Dennis stared at it. "This is you," he said. "It's been me for about 2 years," Serena said. He looked up at her, then really looked. Maybe for the first time in a very long time, and she watched the understanding move across his face slowly, the way weather moves across an open field. The corner lot, the fourplex, the old dry cleaner, the coffee shop where he got his morning cup. All of it. Her. You bought the whole street, he said. Most of it. He was quiet for a long time. His hands were flat on the table, pressing down as if the surface might shift beneath him. Serena. Her name in his mouth sounded like an apology that hadn't quite found its full shape yet. I need to sell this house. The taxes, I can't manage it. The upkeep. He paused. I don't have anywhere to go. I know, she said. So you came back to finish it. She looked at him for a long moment. At the man who had handed her a shoebox and a locked door, and accidentally handed her an entire future along with them. I came back, she said carefully, to offer you fair market value and a leaseback option at below market rent, so you can stay in this house as long as you want to. The offer is clean. I'm not taking anything from you that you don't agree to give me. Dennis blinked. Why? It was the question she had been sitting with since the boarding house on Fisk Street, since the car behind the laundromat, since every Sunday night spreadsheet, and every early morning when she lay awake trying to decide what kind of woman she was building herself into. Because Mom would have asked me to, Serena said. And because what I built out there, she nodded toward the window, toward the street, toward the coffee shop and the fourplex and the corner lot with its rooftop garden, isn't about you anymore. It stopped being about you a long time ago. Dennis looked at the document. He signed it. And walking to her car afterward, the deed in her briefcase, the leaseback agreement beside it, the November air sharp and clean against her face, Serena felt it arrive. Not triumph, not the cold satisfaction she had imagined in the boarding house, in the car, in the dark years of the reconstruction. Something warmer than that, and harder to name. She sat in the driver's seat and opened her bag and took out the shoebox. She lifted the lid. Her mother's handwriting looked up at her from the top card, slightly faded now, the ink, the particular color of something that had been loved a long time. You are the strongest thing I ever made, Serena. Don't let anyone tell you different. She thought about calling Raymond. She thought about the women's financial counseling nonprofit on the second floor of her corner lot building, about the woman who ran it, a 23-year-old named Destiny, who had come to the opening with 2 garbage bags of possessions and a look in her eyes that Serena recognized with the bone-deep accuracy of a mirror. She had given Destiny the nonprofit space rent-free for 3 years. She hadn't told anyone that. She started the car. She drove past the house one last time, the sagging porch railing, the blue shutters, the window of the gold-lit room on the second floor, and she did not stop. She had not needed to move back into that room to reclaim what it had always meant. The strongest women are not the ones who return to burn down what hurt them. They are the ones who quietly build something so solid, so permanent, so undeniably theirs, that the people who once locked the door against them are left standing in the middle of a neighborhood that belongs entirely to the girl they threw out. Serena Webb did not take back her room. She made herself impossible to remove from anything, ever again.